That's right, we got power distribution to the rear seat, baby. Hey everybody, Tom the Dilettante here. Hope you're all doing well. Today's video is for all my Crosstrek friends out there who have also felt that for a long time the rear seat of this car has been missing some power. So I'm going to walk you through how I installed a 12-volt power center with USB connections in the back of my center console armrest. We'll start by disassembling the center console and then take it inside the shop, cut some holes, drop in the sockets and test it out, and then reinstall. You can find some timestamps in the description below in case you want to skip any particular sections, but I think you might find the whole thing interesting. So let's get to work. First thing we're going to do is put on the parking brake, and then we need to shift the car into neutral so we can get the shift knob off. Now some people will go ahead and just pull this little dooha off, shove a screwdriver down there, which will release a mechanism to allow you to shift it in neutral. I'm just going to put the key in, put it on here, foot on the brake, finger on the trigger, turn it back off, pull the key out, and now I can move it in neutral and be done. Next I'm going to get a little screwdriver, put it here behind the boot, and go ahead and separate this down. Alright, next you're going to have this little clip right here. So we're going to take a little pick, get up under there, and pull that out. And with that clip removed, the shift knob will just come right out. Alright, next we need to get the boot off around the e-brake. Lift the armrest, and I like to start my prying here since it's going to be covered by the armrest anyway. Just a small screwdriver, and this whole thing is going to pry up. So once you get it underneath, you can start to pull up, use your fingers. You can even use a prying tool if you'd like. Continue prying up. And then once you have the whole thing, just pull up. And as you can see, all it is a bunch of vertical clips that go down into the center console to hold this in place. From here, the rest of the center console is just held in place by tabs and clips. So just get in place and start pulling up. It'll start to come up here and literally just start peeling it up. Get up to the front, peel it up. Then you can reach up underneath here, pop this part out here, lift it up over the shift lever. Up behind the cup holder, there's going to be a wire. You just depress that and separate it, and the whole piece will come out. In the back, slide your seats all the way forward, pop off these covers on each side, and you'll remove a screw on each side. Pop that off. Back on the inside, you're going to have 4 screws to remove. 1, 2, 3, 4 to split this case apart. Alright, in your center console, go ahead and pull off your 12-volt connector. There's a little tab right here. You've got your audio jack input. Just depress this, pull back, and then your USB cables. Depress this and pull back. Okay, the center console is only held in now by 2 clips in the front. So we're going to take this and separate it there, grab the whole piece, pull, and now the whole console will come out. Alright, so we've got the center console out. The reason I wanted to take the center console out was that I've long felt that the Crosstrek has lacked some type of aux power bank for the rear passengers, or even just for me if I want to plug something in a little bit more convenient than going through the damn center console or up into that little cubby hole up in front of the shifter. Anyway, so much like I did for the rear hatch and that power distribution block I put there, you can find the video up here, I picked up this little guy. It's really nothing more than another 12-volt socket as well as some USB connectors. So what I didn't know was whether or not there was actually going to be enough room back here to put something like this. After all, this is a little deep when you consider the depth of the socket as well as the wiring. So now that I've got this thing off, let's take a look to see whether or not we've actually got enough room. Okay, if we take a look at how much room we've got in here, there's actually a fair amount of space in the back of the center console facing the rear seat. And if I were to drop in this socket set that I want to put in there, you can see it looks like there's going to be ample room for both the sockets as well as wiring. Alright, so the way I see it, this thing should fit pretty well if we put it right about this height here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to flip this thing over, mark out where I want to drill some holes, and unlike what I did in the hatch, instead of cutting out a giant area, I'm just going to drill a couple of holes for these sockets, leave this faceplate on top, and we'll see how that works. Let's get to marking. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're basically going to eyeball this as far as where we want it. This is about the height and center, and I'm going to temporarily secure this with some gaff tape. And I'm going to go ahead and mark one of my holes. Pull this off. Now I'm going to be using 8x32 countersunk screws, machine screws, to hold this in place. And so for that I'll use an 11/64 drill bit. Okay, we're going to eyeball the center of this. The holes I'm going to drill are slightly oversized anyway, so we should be okay. Nothing like trying to pull a plastic panel piece out of a hole saw. Okay, that looks good, but the holes that I cut, I didn't account for the size of these nuts that hold the sockets in place. And so while the holes are big enough for the sockets themselves, they're too small to shove these through. So right now I'm debating whether or not to try to shove these sockets through and screw them on from the backside, give it another way to hold it in place, or to enlarge the holes, which will be harder to do now that they're already cut, in order to fit this size. Now on one hand, if I enlarge the holes, then I'll be able to run the wires through this, connect it up, and then drop it in and be good to go. Whereas if I screw the nuts on from the backside, then I'm going to need to assemble this whole thing and then try to wire it up while it's installed. Let's see how hard it is to go ahead and put the nuts on from the backside. Alright, well that's doable. That's kind of a pain in the butt. And I worry that if those ever came loose, in order to retighten them, I'd have to take this whole center console apart again. So I'm just going to go ahead and enlarge the holes. Alright, so what I've tried to do here is basically reinforce the back, put something new in there, so I have some meat in order to use a different hole saw. So let's see how this works out. Alright, success. This is why you let me do this shit first. Alright, we're going to set this stuff aside right now and get to the wiring. Alright, this ground lead I have a feeling is going to be long enough to go ahead and stretch it out and ground it to the chassis up underneath the console. This power lead, however, though, I want to run it up into the fuse block and do another fuse tap. And so I don't want this fuse again here, that's for sure, because if this thing ever blows, the only way I can replace it is going to be to open up the center console again. So I'm going to use some 16 gauge wire and run a nice long hot lead to the front. Alright, good to go. Okay, we're wired up and ready to go ahead and get to assembly. By the way, I like to use nylon nuts when doing something like this where I don't have access to it, just because it'll help keep it tight. Don't have to worry about it backing off. Okay, not bad. Looks pretty good. Everything's set up and I just got to wire it in the car. Let's give it a shot. Alright, as you can see, we've got the center console loosely laid in place, and this was to get the wiring done. I've got the ground wire stuck to a chassis ground here. The power lead is going to go through the center console, up under the dash, and I've got it currently routed to a fuse tap on an accessory fuse. The factory fuse was a 7.5 amp, and I put a 10 amp fuse for the accessory panel in the back. Now it's just a matter of putting it all back together in the reverse order, and we should be good to go. So there you have it, rear seat power now in the back of the 2nd gen Crosstrek, and I dig it. Right now I've got my Midland GMRS radio plugged into it, and it's mounted in between the front seat and the center console, and my phone. Now this mod might not be for everybody, but for me, I like to have as many power accessory options as possible. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you try this mod yourself, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear how it went. Until the next time, this is Tom the Dilettante, wishing you all a wonderful week. Have a good one.